Well, it was a great weekend at Ford Field. Always is, man. A lot of good games, a lot of blowouts. It's a positive day. We're on high vibes. I'm not going to sit here and say how I think the MHSAA should shorten their divisions or do this or that. Let's just talk about the good things that happened. The game of the weekend, in my opinion, was the D7 game. Ted, you hyped it up, how good Traverse City St. Francis was. They played Jackson Lumen Christie. I mean, it was the game of the weekend. So basically what it was, I mean, Josh Sellers, I was really impressed with St. Francis, their offense. I mean, different formation every play. At one point, he had a perfectly dialed up, kind of hid the running back right behind the offensive line, just went right up the chute, right up the middle. Quarterback just happened to overthrow him, but it should have been a touchdown. And then you got Herb Brogan on the other side, legendary Jackson Lumen Christie coach. My favorite moment of that entire game and the entire weekend was, so down 12-0 at half. Everything is going St. Francis's way.
Sure was.
Star quarterback for Jackson Lumen Christie, Joe Lathers, superstar athlete. I mean, in the semifinal, we have a highlight of him hurdling a kid on his way to the end zone. Gathers around all the Jackson Lumen Christie's offense, huddles them up, and you can just see him, impassionately speaking to them right before they go into the half, come back out. He's making plays left and right. I mean, just a stud player. Ends up getting them the win. And, Herb Brogan, who's won 11 of these things, you would think, man, he doesn't really give a shit about this game. I mean, he would look as happy as anyone on that sideline afterward, because you look at that team and they lost their first 3 games of the year. 0-3, they rattled off 11 straight wins. And you could just tell he was happiest man out on that field. So that was a really cool game. And I mean, Division 7, every year it delivers, man. There's 4 top programs. We talked about it last week. I mean, New Lothrop, Traverse City, St. Francis, Pewamo, and Jackson Lumen Christie now. I mean, it's just such a fun division with 4 really good head coaches at all those programs. So it's one of the best games every weekend.
You talk about Brogan. I mean, 40 years on the sideline, almost 400 wins. We talked about Clint Galveston, his 145. Brogan, 400 wins almost. Think about that.
Legend.
I couldn't believe he was still coaching them.
Yeah.
That's a lot, man.
I was really impressed with them. I mean, a kid like Lathers, I mean, you see a moment like that where I'm sitting in the truck. I'm like, dude, this team has no shot. All the momentum was St. Francis's way, and it's just cool to see a kid kind of rally the troops like that. Great leader, of course.
I'll lead you into this too, Jared. I know you like the bigger classes, and you've talked about Dante more this season, but this first time I've had a chance to see him. That kid.
How was that?
That kid can play, man. I can see why he could turn Michigan State around if they can get him to decommit, man, because he's awesome.
It's funny watching a kid like that compared to all these other high school quarterbacks where it's basically like pre-snap read, pick your receiver out before the snap and throw it. He's reading the entire field. And it's like he's playing chess. Everybody else is playing checkers. He's got sidearm deliveries. He's accurate as hell, makes the right read. Just a calm, cool, collected. I mean, we had a cool shot of him right before the very first snap. He takes a huge, deep breath. And I mean, they're on a different level. I mean, they might have been the best team in the state. They tried to schedule Belleville for whatever reason. The PSL blocked it earlier this year, but I mean, he's the best player I've seen in my lifetime in Michigan. But one that might argue that is Bryce Underwood for Belleville, sophomore quarterback, undefeated, has never lost a game.
Just a sophomore too, so he's gonna be around 2 more years.
Yeah. Had 5 touchdowns his freshman year in the state championship. Had 5 basically again this year. Number 1 ranked sophomore in the entire country. He's a star, man. I mean, and what I loved about Belleville, I mean, they've had all this stuff going down with their head coach, getting suspended for 2 years, fired. Juwan Rogers steps in as the interim head coach. They roll into Ford Field all wearing sunglasses and, full suits. It was awesome.
Yeah. And they kind of smashed Caledonia, right? And Caledonia was a hell of a team. Caledonia is really good, and they just smashed them, right?
Yeah, they did. I mean, Belleville, as long as that kid's your quarterback, I mean, it's going to be either them or Cass Tech in Division I next year. I've talked about that kid for Cass Tech, Corey Sadler Jr., a true freshman. He's a stud too. So it'll be fun to see those two quarterbacks kind of battle it out for the next couple of years. Yeah. Moving on from there, Dan Roan, Warren De La Salle, 6 titles now. He could win 500 if he keeps coaching. I know college kind of might be calling his name soon. If I'm a GLIAC school, I'm on the phone with Dan Roan this offseason. I'm trying to get him there. I mean, he's so impressive. The stud quarterback they have, in my opinion, Mr. Football, Brady Drogosh, Cincinnati commit. Who knows? Maybe he'll flip to Wisconsin now. Yeah. I mean, they just didn't even get touched. The game was over as soon as they stepped on the field, just like it was last year in the state finals.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one hell of a coach.
Yeah, he is. And the Pilots have a pretty good sports program going right now. Back-to-back football, and they won Division I basketball last year. Right. That's not too bad.
I mean, when you've got those kind of athletes on the football field, a lot of them are going to play basketball. So you do kind of see that sometimes. But we talked about before Frankenmuth and how they've been rolling, and Gladwin too. But I mean, from what I didn't watch the game, from what I saw on Twitter, that was also, I saw some people saying that was the game of the weekend.
Great game. I mean, ended up on a basically a game-winning field goal with a second left from a kid who this coach had to go out and recruit. Basically before the offseason, like find a kicker, and this kid comes in. They had a female that kicked their PATs, and he would kick their field goals. And the biggest play of the game came down to him. You know what I love about Gladwin? One, they're tougher than hell, which I can always respect, man. I mean, they just had some real slobber knockers on that team.
They did.
But my favorite thing, 9 two-way starters. A lot of times in high school, man, these coaches, they overthink it. I mean, I hate to do this, but I mean, just take a look at Corona. I mean, Wyatt Bauer, he plays quarterback. That's it. He should never leave the field. Right. He should be, your punt returner, your kick returner, starting at safety, starting at quarterback. And this Gladwin coach, realizes that, man. These kids are high school kids. They're having fun. Keep them on the field, man. I mean, they're made of Gumby. They're not going to get hurt. Let them run. And that's what I love to see, man. I mean, just a good core of 9 stud players, and they got it done. I mean, just a lot of fun to see that happen. And I mean, it's a shame for Frankenmuth and Phil Martin. They kind of seem to be the Buffalo Bills, where they kind of can't get over that hump. But still, nothing to kind of shake their head. I mean, that's still a hell of a program there.
Well, it was a great weekend down there. Bills. Yeah.
I was going to say Ted's ugly Bears, kind of the same thing, right? Like they just can't get over the hump.
Bridesmaids, man, lost 26-20. I mean, Whiteford, their second title, first one for their new head coach. Their previous coach, Jason Mensing, a little trivia for you. He was a one-time Owasso Trojan head coach for a couple of years. He won a state championship.
And recruit him back.
You're right. Try and get him back.
When you talked about Corona, I mean, Goodrich won the Flint Metro League and went on all the way to the championship game. They just kind of had a dud game against the Sailors.
Yeah, it's just better athletes out there. I mean, and I will say this, that, I mean, how many times have you covered Goodrich, and yet you've never quite cracked this Tom Allward story? The first player ever signed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, what the hell, man? I mean, you've been doing this game.
I brought that up somewhere down the line, Jared. I think I could find it in my pregame notes.
Definitely. And you know what's going to happen now. Ted's going to be up until 3 a.m. tonight trying to find that game. And
I guarantee you I brought that up before.
Hey, I'll say, man, I've listened to your broadcast. I don't know. I don't ever remember hearing that factoid.
For people who don't know, though, what are you talking about?
So basically, Tom Allward, Goodrich's head coach, I think 30 seasons. I mean, legendary coach. Played in the NFL when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, were an expansion team. He was the very first player they signed. And I don't remember, he had a long college, playing career obviously as well, but just a great coach. And I'll say this about Goodrich, man. I mean, they're tough. They were, if that game was played in, a snowstorm, I think Goodrich maybe wins it. But I mean, GRSC has a stud basketball player at wideout, Jake Vermas, had 150 yards receiving, eight receptions. Kid's a stud basketball player as well. There's a little bit too many athletes out there. I mean, Goodrich never really sniffed the end zone, but they played hard all the way through. Yeah. But they just didn't have the horses to bring it home.
Speaking of Grand Rapids South Christian, so obviously I have a little bit of a connection to them. That's the school that beat my team in football and in basketball. And they won state titles in both of those sports. So they stole. I stand by it. They stole 2 state titles from us. But the connection is their head coach now, Danny Brown. He was on the teams that beat us. He played wide receiver and defensive back on their football team, really? And then he played on their basketball team too. So I remember he actually laid me out a couple times. I caught the ball both times.
No, man. You know what's funny? We had a flashback pack. He caught a touchdown in the state championship game back in 2002. I didn't even connect the dots that it was that was the same team that would have beat you. But
he's a good player. Coach.
Yeah,
he was a good player. I was just going to tell this story real quick. You obviously know a little more background than I do, but so one of my buddies, so obviously over in Grand Rapids, one of my buddies went to a college over there and lived. He just hopped on Craigslist and found a house to live in, and it was actually 3 Grand Rapids South Christian guys that a kid from Corona went and moved in with these guys. And right when he went in and saw South Christian, he was like, my friend, he played football too. He was like, oh, God, you guys went to South Christian. So obviously that brought up all these stories and stuff like that. Danny Brown was there. And he was like, to my buddy, he was like, do you know Matt Burns? Are you friends with him? I mean, obviously it's Corona, you're friends, everyone. But he was like, yeah, that's one of my good buddies. He was like, man, I drilled him a couple times.
Good God, he must have really got you. I don't remember that. I've seen
Apparently.
the footage of that game, but
a couple good calls. I'll say Ted. I've got him if we want to. Ted with a couple good calls on him too.
Hey,
But
thanks.
I caught the ball. I'm going to say I caught the ball.
Yeah, but
That's what
I mean,
counts.
just a great weekend at Ford Field. I mean, it's always such a fun. I mean, you're working your balls off from Sunday night till Sunday morning when you finish it up. But it's fun the whole way, man. I mean, it's such a cool story. I mean, like I said, that Lathers story, Jackson Lumen Christie, how they never quit. I mean, that's my biggest takeaway. That's probably what I'll remember most from this weekend. Yeah. I mean, I love that because that was such an X's and O's coach versus coach game. That's like that's my heaven right there watching that game. So that was a lot of fun.
Before we end this segment, I want to send a few salutes out to some all-staters from our area. But so you were there basically from what, 4 or 5 a.m. both days until close
11
to midnight. 11.
Yeah.
That's a couple long days. But I was going to say,
you talked about overtime.
You talked about it a little bit last week. I mean, Bally Sports, man, you guys have a great crew, from your on-air talent to the production you put out there. Those games are tremendously well done, and it's 8 games of tremendous viewing. I didn't get a chance to watch every single play of every single game, but I recorded them and I'd fast forward between each play, and maybe see the packages that you were involved in.
Right.
It was really well done.
No, I'll say this. I mean, and we talked last week about, kind of some of the play-by-play guys, Shepard, Dickerson. I tell you what, I think our color guy, Rob Rubik, in terms of dissecting a high school football game, I don't know if there's anyone else with him. He's so good. I love hearing him call games. Him and Matt Shepard will call a lot of the Eastern Michigan football games, so they're a great crew together. But yeah, I think he kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Obviously, I've seen him call a lot of great games before, but I just thought he always does a great job.
Who's the young play-by-play guy?
Grant Perry.
No, play-by-play.
Oh, Evan Stockton.
Yeah, I think that guy's really good, and he's got a big future. He's not very old, is he? He's 30? Young. Is he even 30 yet?
No, 20. I bet he's probably 26, 27. He works hard, man. I mean, he's doing a different, he's at Western Michigan this night doing basketball game. He's at, wherever else doing a volleyball game. Then he's nonstop working. He works hard.
He did the Prep Pigskin preview a couple months ago.
Yep, that as well.
I think, well, not that the dude cares, but I think he's really good and has a future. I mean, he's got a great delivery, and I think big things coming for him. All right. Well, before we wrap up this segment, man, I just got to say, all state teams came out. There was 3 from Goodrich made first team, according to the Football Coaches Association. Corunna offensive lineman Jake Nichols made first team. Wyatt Bauer made it as an athlete, and he made it for his stats he put up as a quarterback, his play on defensive, as a defensive back, and special teams. So congratulations to Wyatt Bauer Jr., all 8 first team as an athlete. First team quarterback in Division 5 was Nick Wheeler of Gladwin and Alex Petersburg of Williamston. And Corunna beat the Hornets, so that was cool to see. Durand had an all-stater and Dylan McDonald, and Langsburg had a wide receiver, Connor Hulleberger, made first team All-State. And for New Lothrop, offensive lineman Jaden Curry, defensive lineman Grayson Orr, and an 8-player football Division 2 for Morris, Gage Cartier on the defensive line. So we were pretty well represented in our area. Nice. First team All-Staters.
That is a cool award. I mean, you got that the rest of your life. You can say that.
I remember my buddy Cooper, my senior year. He was a unanimous All-State. I mean, that's something to be proud of. For sure. Those all conference awards, they can sometimes be a little bit convoluted, maybe a little bit insider politicky, but those All-State, man, you got to be a legit ball player to win those. So that's cool. Now we just need Mid-Michigan to win a state title.
Right.
That's
What does Corunna, since we're Cavaliers, I'll end it with this. What do they need to do to maybe make an appearance at Ford Field and get a state championship? We know what's that?
I said drop to D6.
No.
No, but they could in D5. That would definitely help. But no, I don't think they're that far off. That was my biggest takeaway from this weekend. I mean, if Goodrich can make it, then Corunna can make it in D5. 100%. They just
you got to have some luck. You got to get the right matchups. That's obviously a big part. I think what you said, Jared, is spot on. You've got a few guys who are clearly your best players. They should not leave the field, even if you don't want them to get hurt. You don't want to lose your quarterback. Obviously, your all-state quarterback. You don't want to lose him. But, you've got a few players that should play all the time. Maybe it's what, Durand, John Webb was talking to us. I know Coach Herrick has those guys working out and everything, but, Coach Webb told us how they brought in
Amari Coleman. Right?
Amari
Is that his name?
Coleman,
Amari.
to coach, speed and do all these off season. Maybe they need to commit a little more to the off season training regimen or something. But
we can talk about coaching. Obviously, it's important. I think they do that in the locker room. The players in the locker room. I mean, I just told you, you see it from these kids, man, where they face adversity. I mean, Gladwin had no right win in that game. Right. A couple, they just kept battling, man. And I saw with Jackson Lumen Christie, same thing. Just one, leader quarterback that rallies the troops, keeps their heads on straight. I mean, that's so important when these teams are playing. Right. And so I just think it's going to be one in the weight room, like said Matt, and out on the track and especially in the locker room.
Amen. I'll say this to finish off my reliving my glory days. Even though I still stand by, we could have beaten Grand Rapids South Christian. They 100% were in better shape than us, and I can say that now. 20 years later, I can eat my crow or whatever you want to say. They clearly were bigger, faster, stronger than us. We probably could have beat them, right? 7 out of 10 times or something like that, but we were getting pushed around a little bit. And so I think about that. Like we didn't have the weight room that you had, Jared. It got built after I graduated, of course. And, so I think that's a huge part, having that commitment. We worked hard in the summer. I'm not taking anything away from us, but that was an eye-opening thing when we went up against that South Christian team. It was like, holy shit, these guys
and it's one of those things. I mean, I would love to see how that we need to have Snooze to You do a deep dive on how that bracket was set up that year. It really makes no sense how you guys are facing a team 2 hours away, both two top teams in the state, 9-0. I mean, I know that's no excuse, and maybe you guys, lose somewhere else along the way, but it just isn't right that you guys had to play that game as early as you did. Nothing you can do about it now. I mean, it is what it is. But if I was at that point in time, I would love to have seen how that shook out, how it did.
Yeah, it's cool to see that they got a hometown kid as their head coach. So that is
well. We love our high school football, that's for sure.
Capital Sports Fieldhouse is the home of hit and pitch and a whole lot more. The 10,000 square foot turf field can be used for all indoor sports training, including football, baseball, basketball, softball, soccer, and many other activities. Hit and pitch has 7 indoor batting cages with full pitching tunnel and the state-of-the-art Hit Tracks training system utilized by MLB organizations. Located in the old Capitol Bowl J.C. Penney block on South Washington in Owasso, Michigan. For more details, call Capital Sports and Hit and Pitch at 989-472-4624 or online at capitalsportsfh.com.